He just wanted a girlfriend. When I was about 9 years old, female, my family used to live in a remote area, on the outskirts of town. Considering the location of the suburb, that area was surrounded by warehouses and such. At the time, my family did not have a phone in the house and neither did our neighbors. There were no cell phones back then, or they were a luxury and not everyone could afford one. This took place in end of 90s. So, if I needed to call my mum whilst she was at work, I had to either go to my dad's work or a company next to his, which was closer, to make a phone call. My dad's work was a relatively short walk from our house, probably 30 minutes or less. My dad was working at a huge unloading dock for metallurgical/natural resources shipments. In order to get to my dad's work, I had to walk past another adjacent company just like the one where my dad was working. I will call it Docks 2. My dad's work, as well as Docks 2, had a sort of watchtower. It is just a cabin mounted at the top of a tall platform and you need to go up a decent amount of stairs to get to the top. There was always a guard inside overseeing the whole yard from the top, during the day and night, to make sure no one is in danger/no break-ins. The phones were located only on site watchtowers at the time. Docks 2 were much closer to our house, about 10 minutes walk. One day, as I've done many times before, I went to the Docks 2 to make a call. I climbed the stairs, knocked on the door and was welcomed in by a guard I used to see quite often and knew well. However, that day he wasn't alone. New guy, 28 at the time, was there. Apparently he was a new employee hired to work shifts. He was this very tanned white guy always wearing military-style outfits. I was just an average-looking child looking exactly my age. My hair were very blonde, which made my checks always appear rosy red and give me even more childish appearance. When the new guy saw me that day, he wouldn't take his eyes off me. As soon as I was about to finish my call with my mom, it's just one room so everyone can hear my conversation with her, the new guy went outside to smoke. When I came out, he smiled at me and asked me what my name is and whether I came there often to make calls. I don't remember what I said, but I felt very shy because he was just staring deeply into my eyes. I will call him the creep. Fast forward and I came to that tower again to make a call. And there he was again, but that time he was alone. I spoke to my mum and as I was about to leave, he asked me if I want any tea, to which I refused. He then proceeded to ask how my school was going and things like that. He offered to help me with my homework, however I told him I've got it all sorted. Harmless but strange. On a side note, I just want to say that what gave me shivers when I was near him is that whenever he looked at me he looked drunk, which was very unsettling. Mind you, he wasn't actually drunk, but his eyes would get so hazy and his face would flush red. Sometime later I saw him again. That time I was walking to my dad's work with my friend and he was doing some digging in the docks too. When he saw me through the metal fence that was separating us, he just leaned against his shovel and just stared at me. He didn't say hi or anything like that. After those encounters, for quite some time I took alternative routes to see my dad or play with puppies at my dad's work or make calls to my mom, because he really creeped me out. However, one day I had to call my mom urgently. My dad's work phone didn't work, so I had to go to the Docks 2 tower, hoping I won't see him. The creep was there. And oh boy, he was so happy I came. He was complaining how I don't come anymore to see him. As I was making a call, he grabbed another chair and sat right next to me, very close. It took a while for the call because my mom was busy with something and someone went to get her whilst I was on the line. It felt like hours waiting and the creep was just sitting next to me, looking at me and smiling. When my mom finally got to the phone, he got up and went to make me tea and brought some biscuits. When I was done talking, he insisted I have some tea with him. I didn't, and he just kept on trying to strike a conversation, but this time the tone of conversation was different. He asked me how old exactly I was and I told him 12 or 13, I have no idea why I've lied that I was older than 9. He told me his age and although I knew he was much older, I felt really weirded out that he wanted to talk to me so badly or had any interest in being my friend. My alarms did go off every time I was around him, but I guess I didn't feel overly in danger. He then proceeded to tell me that I was beautiful and asked me whether I had a boyfriend. He asked me if I have already dated boys and what type of boys I liked. I was so uncomfortable and so eager to leave at that point, but he would just keep dragging me into these weird conversations. I could tell he was drinking that day. When I began moving towards the door, he followed me. Eventually we both were outside. However, in order to get down from the tower you need to walk this narrow path towards the stairs. He stood blocking it so that I couldn't leave. He got very close to me and I freaked out. The only escape tactic I could come up with as a child was to pretend that I'm seeing someone from the top of the tower. So I began waving my hand at the road down the bottom and towards houses in the distance, pretending I see someone I know and saying, "Oh look, that's my uncle, he is waving at me." The creep looked in that direction but either didn't care or could tell that I was lying. I kept on telling him that the uncle who waved back is a big angry man and if I won't come down this instance and go home, we both are going to be in trouble. The creep didn't budge. He got even closer and eventually pressed me against the railing. He kept on asking me his weird questions whilst I was terrified to move because I didn't want to move my body against his, if that makes any sense, so I just froze. He asked me if would come on a date with him and that he is looking for a girlfriend. And at that particular moment someone was coming up the stairs to the tower, so he let me go, but asked me to come back. I have not told anyone about this encounter at that stage because I was afraid that my parents would get angry. I also felt very embarrassed and thought that people would judge me for what's happened. Sometime later I was home and it was around 9 p.m, I know the time because it was my bedtime. Suddenly a car came into our driveway. I came to see who it was through the front room window and I could see it was the creep, but this time with other guys, blasting music in his car and shouting my name. I have no idea how he knew where I lived. He must have followed me one day. My dad was outraged. He asked me who these people were, but before I could even answer he rushed outside. Apparently the creep asked for me to go out with him and his friends. My dad obviously refused, saying that I am a child and too young to hang out with them or go out at this time of the night, and that if he sees any one of them ever again, he will beat the living day out of them. So they drove away. I was so upset with my dad that he called me a child in front of them, so stupid. I think because we lived so far away from everything I was really keen to make friends as there were no kids around as such. For a while after that I haven't seen the creep or heard of him. Significant time later I was walking to my dad's work again and I've completely forgotten about the creep. He was working in the docks too with his friends, maybe those that came with him that night in the car, or maybe these were just his co-workers. I got scared when I saw him and even thought he shouted hi. I pretended not to know him. He said something to his friends and I remember so clearly how one of his friends exclaimed loudly her. I guess he told them about me or his interest in me, but no one expected me to be a child. I looked at the guy that exclaimed. He was staring at me in an utter disbelief. He must have been 20 to 25 or so, I think. And the creep was saying something to him. His friend screamed at him, "Have you lost your mind?" Clearly the creep didn't see me as a child like everyone else did. Fast forward again, maybe half a year later. One day I was home alone in the evening waiting for my parents to come back from work. We lived in a very safe community, so sometimes I'd be home myself for a little bit after school till my parents got home. I was playing a game whereby I was a singer. I had this stage created in the living room and I was performing in front of chairs, pretending chairs were my live audience. It was pitch black outside. At some point during my performance I see someone staring at me through the living room window. That person must have been crouching down as only top of the face could be seen from the bottom. As soon as that person realized I saw them, they run away. I was so embarrassed that someone saw me performing, scared, and shocked at the same time, that I was literally glued to the floor. I don't know whether that was him. Our dog didn't react at all, maybe because music was playing very loud. I was scared to go outside the house to check, but peered through the window, however no one was there. That person had to climb over a wooden fence to get to our living room window. I told my parents about it. I've also asked my friend whether it was him who came around, but he said it wasn't him. I don't know if my friend felt shy to admit he was watching me or whether it was the creep. To finish this up, one day I went to the docks too with my dad, as my dad needed something from there for work. I saw the old guard that I knew well and asked about the creep and was told that he doesn't work there anymore. I don't know what happened of him. I never told my parents about what's happened. So, even though I know our paths will never cross, let's not meet.